All right, we are on.
Welcome to Detroit in Black and White. This is the Saturday edition. We're virtual today. Uh, Jim Nardone, good morning.
Good morning.
Uh, Lengel, co-founder of Deadline Detroit. How you doing today?
I'm good. Good morning.
And what the fuck is happening at Michigan State? They're purging everybody. How you doing today?
I'm good. What's going on in Michigan State? I haven't even seen what's.
They fired the athletic director.
Oh, that's right, the athletic director. Who knows? I mean, those universities, man, they cover up everything until they can't. But who knows what's going on?
He's crying foul. He's saying that I guess he stepped on the toes of some important folks. Good morning, Attorney Vanessa Moss.
Good morning. Good morning, all of you co-hosts. I want to say good morning to all of those that are watching us on YouTube and Facebook. Good morning, Dwayla Boyce. Good morning, Same Day Parlay. Good morning, Sam. I'm sure some other people will be joining us. We want you to like, subscribe, and share. We're trying to get our viewership up, and we're trying to get our subscription up. So we want you to help us do that. Tell your friends about Detroit in Black and White. You could catch us every Wednesday and Friday night from 8:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. and every Saturday morning from 10 o'clock in the morning to 11 o'clock. We're usually live at McShane's, but today we're doing it virtual. But we want to thank you guys so much for participating, watching, and telling people about Detroit in Black and White.
Okay. Well, we'll start with you, Vanessa. Your outrage of the week.
So my outrage has to do with a little boy named Cassius Lofton, and they call it Cass for short. I think we have a little video that we can play as it relates to Cass. You want to shoot the video, play the video?
Sure.
Tonight, the 7 investigators reveal yet another heartbreaking tragedy that's raising serious questions over how Children's Protective Services is doing its job.
The latest case comes after a Detroit woman sounded the alarm to CPS after her nephew began showing signs of abuse. So how did the 2-year-old end up back in harm's way only weeks later?
Here's 7 investigator Ross Jones.
Standing up to believe that I did the right thing is causing me to be uncomfortable with my own family. But he had no voice, and who will speak for him if I don't?
The deck was stacked against Cassius Lofton from the day he was born. The Flint toddler, known as Cass, was diagnosed with Down syndrome and was developmentally delayed. At almost 3 years old, he was just learning how to walk. So when bruises started to appear all over Cass's body last year, family members feared the worst, and he couldn't tell them where they came from.
I received pictures of him with belt buckle marks on one side and a long scar down the other side. He had 2 black eyes and bruises all over his back.
Brenda Wellens Watson is Cass's aunt and lives here in Detroit. After seeing the photos of her nephew's injuries, she did not wait to do something about them. She shared them with Children's Protective Services. Brenda contacted CPS on July 20th, sending photos like this one telling the caseworker 2 black eyes. Flint police investigated 2, confirming Cass's injuries. CPS would take Cass away from his mother.
I'm just looking. I'm like, what's wrong with his face?
Patricia Carradine is Cass's godmother. That's who he stayed with after CPS intervened. Patricia and other family members say they asked Cass's mom, Tierra Wellens, where he got all those injuries, and say they received different answers.
It was his white blood cells. He had an allergic reaction.
Cass would stay with his godmother Patricia for the next month, until a day in August when she received a phone call from a CPS caseworker telling her it was time to return Cass to his mom.
She sent me a text message. It was something about the case. They wanted to close it or dismiss it or whatever.
I was battling with them not to return him back with me within 48 hours. And by the time she called me back, I told her I didn't need her help anymore because Cassius was dead.
God. Well, that
He's listen, you guys know me and you know that I practice in For those who don't know, I spent almost 10 years over in juvenile court, Wayne County Juvenile Court, as a guardian ad litem, as well as a defense attorney for children. And this is beyond, I can't even think of an adjective that could adequately describe how disappointed I am that this system, Child Protective Services, failed this kid, this little boy, Down syndrome. He's developmentally delayed, and he was nonverbal. He couldn't even when they abused him, he couldn't even say ouch. And you're talking about a vulnerable population for you to just overlook this. I don't even know how that kid was able to go back home. And everything is, and I get parents have rights, and everything is, to me, shrouded in secrecy. How in the, excuse my expression, how in the hell was it okay to send that kid back home? You know damn well he did not get belt whelps on his face because of an allergic reaction. Are you kidding me?
So what are they doing to the?
What does they say about the Department of Health and Human Services, in particularly Child Protective Services?
They fail. Yeah, it's a failure. That's nothing new. Because this is what they do.
It's not new. It's a shame. It's a crying shame. It is a crying shame.
It's a crime, not a shame. It's a crime.
It seems like they just wanted to make it go away. They were just like, all right, we're investigator, we're going to get back. But I mean, the signs are so obvious, as you say. I mean, you know, black guys and welts and all that kind of stuff. It's just, you know, I mean, really, that the child worker should be complicit and criminally charged in that case.
And these folks that did it, the mother, whoever,
the mother, her boyfriend.
You know, it's like, man, especially a kid that's mentally developed can't express any kind of feelings. You know, you can beat him and he's not saying anything.
Right.
Can't tell anybody, help me. And then you send them back. It's like, you know, sending a fox into a hen house and say, you know, enjoy your dinner.
What is the governor saying? And what are those people that's running for office for governor? What are they saying? Because they're over the Department of Health and Human Services. Something has got to change. And you're right, Adolph. It's not new, but it should not happen. You have this agency in place, and guess what? The CPS worker was probably following protocol. I'm sure of that. I'm sure of that. I had a case a couple of years ago, very similar. This was a case that I was retained on. Mom was drunk as I don't know what. They had taken the baby out the house, had the baby with the daddy. Mama did, you know, she showed that she had a, you know, listen, I'm sober. She gets the baby back. She's drunk as I don't know what. Car flipped over, baby's gone. Dad is devastated. And they treated this dad like he was a criminal. They treated him like he was the criminal.
You're in the system, and you know, how do you change it?
Listen, we have to hold these people. Listen, we're always talking about elections. We got to hold these people accountable. You can't just talk about education. You got to talk about safety. Safety of kids, not just with guns, but safety of children with their messed up parents. We have to talk about not protecting the vulnerable population, seniors that are taken advantage of. Those are the things that we have to talk about, but we got to hold these people that we elected to office accountable. What the heck are you doing about this? What are you doing?
Well, obviously people, they're just sending out fucking campaign flyers. That's about it. Allan, your outrage of the week.
My outrage is I've been following a little bit the trial in Grand Rapids with the officer, Christopher Schur, who chased the motorist. And he was on his back. The motorist was down flat. The officer was sitting on his back, wrestling with him, and he said his life felt threatened, and he pulled out a gun and he shot him in the back of the head like an animal. And I'd like to get Jim's opinion on this. I mean, I've talked to other cops who just said there were so many different ways to handle that, including, I mean, the cop had a gun. He could have jumped. He said his defense, he's testified on Friday, he feared for his life. He could have jumped off the guy's back, pulled out his gun and said, stop. Instead, he just executed the guy in the back of the head. I think I don't know. I think all these videos, all these cases should be played in training academies, and maybe they are, but they're not, they should be shown like, here's how to do this. Here's alternatives to a disaster for, there's somebody dead. This guy's out of a job, probably going to prison. Jim, I'm curious what your thought is on that whole case.
I haven't been following it. I was looking at a case in Texas where this young man got into a fight with a police officer 2 years ago. I guess he was a meth head, and he ran away, and a cop shot him in the back, through his heart and his chest and his lungs. Tragic, right? He had called his mom. He had just broken up with his girlfriend in Rusk County, I think it was, and I was just sickened by that. Now, getting over the Grand Rapids case, I had lunch with a friend of mine. You all know, he's been on the show before. He's a former deputy, and he's been watching the case, and he told me without a doubt that this young man will probably be acquitted. And I mean, that's obviously just his opinion. That was my reaction when it first happened, because what happens, the way they train police officers, if someone gets your taser, they can kill you, right? If someone gets your taser and they incapacitate you, you are now vulnerable to die. So I don't know that much about this case. I haven't followed this case. It's a tragic case. I sure wouldn't want to be sitting on that jury. I don't think it's as clear cut as some folks think. It should have never happened. I'll give you that. All he had to do was say, when he started running away for a traffic offense, he should have let him run away. But that's not the way people are trained. They're trained to get the bad guy. And sadly, this ended up in a tragic death. And nobody wins. I think you're right, Allan. Nobody wins here.
Over some shit. Over some shit.
Yeah, maybe overzealous policing. He wasn't thinking about, this is only a traffic ticket. This guy's and then it turned into a tragedy.
Like I said, it turned into a murder. Listen, it was what you said, Jim, a simple traffic ticket. But what you also said is that we're trained to catch the bad guy. And we talk about due process all the time. Okay. So we know that they have to go through a process, right? But there's this preconceived notion, because you did this, you're a bad person. And I'm not saying, I'm not a police officer, but I can't imagine the adrenaline that's going through your body and what's going through your mind. This guy was running away. You shot him in the back of the head. It may not be a clear-cut case, but I do know that if you're running and you're shot in the back of your head, guess what? You were no longer a threat, even if you had taken the doggone taser.
No, he was restraining him, and he was sitting on him when it happened.
He was sitting on top of him.
And the guy was trying to get up. I'm just explaining what, and he shot him in the back of the head. I think the problem is, yes, he shouldn't have run. Yes, all that kind of stuff. He shouldn't have grabbed his taser. But, in the end, it's unfortunately a message to some motorists who are freaked out about the cops, who are going to say, oh, my God, that guy got killed. I better run for my life. And we've seen that already, where people say, I don't trust the cops. I'm getting the hell out of there. And the cops go after them. We had it in another incident. I'm trying to remember where, but the guy was, I think it was in Oakland County, where they
we have had so many incidents.
Yeah, so
I just want to end
changing a lane. Sandra Bland changed the lane and end up dead, or somebody jaywalking, dead, selling loose cigarettes, dead. It's just, I don't get it.
Karen said it best, and I was just gonna say exactly what Karen said. The penalty for driving on a suspended license should never be death, and the penalty for a traffic stop cannot be execution, is what Karen said, and she's absolutely right.
Reminds me of the time in Royal Oak where the guy test drove a car and he didn't bring it back, and they called the police. Royal Oak police showed up, saw the guy, they chased him, and he ended up dead, gone with a joyride for a car. They had his license. They already knew who he was. It's not like, he came and stole the car. He never brought the car back, but they had his license, ID, etc. And well, they didn't. Nothing happened to the cops, but they had to pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars to the family. But that kind of money.
Jim, I have a question. In Trenton, what was the protocol in traffic stops, and if somebody ran, was there a whole protocol for what should and shouldn't be done, or how did that work?
Well, you bring up a great point, Alan. I think you hit it right on the head when you said, in police academies we should teach police officers not to be so serious about minor instances like a traffic stop. Somebody gets out, if they're not a threat to somebody else, if they don't have a firearm or a knife, or they're not going to, walk into McDonald's and stab an 8-year-old kid after they left a traffic stop, what's the use? Nothing good comes out of a situation like this. But we don't do that. We don't teach our police officers to let people get away. And that's something we should look at.
That's why when you're chasing folks for a traffic stop and they run into another car or kill somebody, and you say, damn, all it was they ran a red light or they disregarded a stop sign, and here we are.
But I know of no instance if a young man was stopped on a traffic stop and he got out of a vehicle and he took off running, that a police officer is going to stand there and watch. It's just not going to happen.
No, it's not going to happen. Well, let's take a break. Take a commercial break, come back, and we'll go to you, Jim, for your outrage of the week.
And then we also have our guests in the backstage.
We need to acknowledge our
I am sorry.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
Okay, welcome back. To you, Jim, your outrage of the week.
First, thanks to our esteemed treasurer for his nice ad there. So, well, I had this message last night, and sadly it expounded a little bit. In Cincinnati, in the last 2 days, a young man, we're going right back to a police shooting. Young man pulled a gun out. They were in a stolen car, 4 young men, and 1 man fled. It's interesting. And he had a gun. He didn't fire at the police, but he was ultimately killed by the police. Yesterday, the videotape was reviewed by the family, and the father couldn't watch the whole tape. He got in a vehicle and killed a deputy in Cincinnati intentionally. Ran him over and killed him.
Oh, man.
Because he was wearing a uniform. But I was a little triggered yesterday by my colleague Vanessa when she talked about Terry Johnson, and we need to put this all together, call him a Second Amendment advocate. Well, if you're a Second Amendment advocate, or you're a Fifth Amendment advocate, or a 14th Amendment advocate, then that's what police officers as I was reminded by one of our fellow police officers yesterday. We all should be advocates for the Constitution. But what we really have, I'm going to move on a little bit and talk about South Carolina beach town maniac chased children as he mowed down 3 victims at playground in the Isle of Palms near Charleston. On April 26th, up in Canada, our friends to the north, 11 dead, 25 injured in a Filipino Heritage Festival violent act by a man behind the wheel of an Audi. And back to January 1st, I mean, this can go on and on. Bourbon Street, 15 killed. We have a real problem in our communities, and it's a violence problem. And this is going to continue. And I don't know how we address this issue, but I hope police agencies and police chiefs and the FBI and whoever else is involved is out there. The big one hasn't happened yet, right? It's going to be, God forbid that we have an issue at the fireworks in Detroit or, Mount Clemens or.
But we haven't been there, Jim. We haven't done that. Fireworks and we've just been so lucky these past 5 to 10 years when we had all these events that we didn't have these problems. I think the only problem I think we had last 20 years or so was the Super Bowl where the young lady was shot and killed standing because the guy didn't like her getting in, I guess, in front of her or whatever happened, but they never saw that case, and the media basically covered it up because nobody wanted to talk about murders during Super Bowl weekend. So we've been lucky. We have these fights at the Lions games, but that don't get that much attention. Baseball, people getting drunk. Other than that, we've been, the fingers crossed, police been on top of everything. You saying that sooner or later it's going to blow up, huh?
Well, the answer is never violence, and when we're using vehicles for violence, it's becoming more and more prevalent.
How do you stop that? How
do
you stop somebody from getting in a fucking car and coming at you?
Well, I think Allan said it on one of the shows. If somebody's bound and determined to get onto Bourbon Street, they're going to get onto Bourbon Street. But we need to be more aware. If you're out there, if you're going to an event, if you're going to a Red Wings game or a Tigers game or a Lions game, pay attention, because people don't have any problem driving down the sidewalk. In 2022, 75 cadets were run over in Los Angeles counties out for a morning run. The
Detroit has one of the highest rates of hit and runs in the country, because people don't stop. People jaywalk across the street and people speed. You got to be, even at where we do our show at McShane's, you have to be very careful crossing the street, going over. There's a Chase Bank and there's condos and apartments, because when people stop on Michigan Avenue and Trumbull, a lot of people don't, when they making that turn, they don't stop. They just keep and you have the right of way to walk across on a green light.
Yeah, you know what though? There's a story this week about 2 people standing at the bus stop. This young lady, I think she's 16 years old, don't have a license, was speeding, right, and was drunk. These people are dead. They catching the bus. They're not driving illegally, right? They're catching the bus trying to get from one place to the other. They're dead. It's outrageous today. I'm telling you, my heart is beating so fast. It's just sad.
We had one of our famous panhandlers. He was in a wheelchair. I remember when he had feet. Then he didn't have feet, but he used to beg for money up by the tunnel, etc. He was all well known in the community. Him and another guy who was pushing him in the wheelchair on Gratiot, somebody from a Tigers game, somebody drunk, ran both of them over, killed them, and kept going. Or you, the judge, Nick Kruss, killed him on Gratiot. I can just name several folks that they hit and they kept going. Go ahead, Allan.
I was going to say, look, we've got mental health problems here. We don't have enough mental health workers to work with people. And also, I think what we need to start thinking about is in high school, like having parenting classes more. I know there are some conflict resolution classes or whatever, but not enough. People have to learn those skills. And
when you shut down every fucking mental facility in the state, like England under his administration, closed Lafayette Clinic, turned it into a charter school. When Northville closed, Pontiac closed, all these places closed, and then these families, they dumped their relatives downtown Detroit or someplace else.
But Adolph, I'm going to challenge that, because when England was in office, how long ago was that? You had Democrats that was in control. That could have been changed. That could have been turned around.
They didn't change it.
They didn't do it. So we could talk about how what he did was deplorable, but nobody has done anything to change it. And so this goes to something that we talk about all the time. Listen, there's enough blame to be placed everywhere. Now, we could sit here and talk about how he closed the mental health facilities. And I do represent people who, I do work in probate. Listen, it is a revolving door. If you think somebody who has poor insight or have no insight as to their illness, if you think they're going to go and go and have their therapy and go see their doctor on an outpatient basis, you're sadly mistaken. Most of them don't.
But relatives can urge some of those people. We're not going to catch everybody. It's no question. People are isolated. They live by themselves or whatever. But people do have relatives who can say, look, I think maybe you should see somebody. And some might, and some may not.
People don't go to the doctor if they got a heart problem. People don't go to the doctor when they feeling
all I'm saying is we can talk about England, but what about the Dems that's been in office that they had a whole lot of control and did nothing? So I don't want to hear nothing about England.
And England is the boogeyman. So I'm putting it on him. Just like now that we got a shortage of air traffic controllers, I'm going right back to Reagan and saying he started it all when he fired everybody and didn't bring them all back. And now we have a shortage of folks there. And I'm scared to fly sometimes. If you're going in the airport, and they're right. The scariest time is the takeoff and the landing, because you never know. You might run into another jet.
Adolph scared of. Wasn't he in that movie where the guy gets the most million-mile awards? Wasn't that Adolph?
Yeah, right.
So can we acknowledge some of our comments? Okay, so we have Burdell Bird. She is Stephanie Jackson, Kevin Powell, Joe Cool, Miss Sheila, Bridget Huff, Deborah Harris, Karen Winston. All of them say good morning. Deborah G. Deborah G says CPS workers are lazy and trifling. Someone should lose their job. Dewela said unbelievable. Deborah Harris says so sad over and over again. Karen Winston says she wondered why there's no accountability. Cynthia Burnett, failure of the system. Glad the family members spoke out. More people should realize all family is not good family. Stephanie Jackson said fear of death from a taser when he had access to a gun and fired the shot in the back of his head. Where's the threat? Day says, he forgot that today's show was not at McShane's. Terry McCrimmon says I wonder, do police departments keep records of how many people an individual officer killed or has killed? Derek Henry says America is angry. We have a lot of people. We have Ronald Hinkle Sr. He says, good morning. Howard says, Allan, Jim, Queen Vanessa, and the legendary Adolph. I'm here, faithful viewer, and listening to my elders. Someone made a comment about mental Howard says he has a childhood friend that refused medical because of that 30-day shot. Derek Henry says Vanessa hits it out the park. Chip Tracy 3324 says good morning. Charles Stiles, my Miles clothing store, he says hello. Greta Wilson said good morning. We got a lot of people. Timothy Squire Bay said good morning. We got a lot of comments this morning. Thank you so much for commenting and joining in the conversation.
We've got Whitney Clark whenever we're ready.
Okay, let's bring Whitney on.
All right.
Good morning, family. How's everybody doing?
You know you're not supposed to be driving it on.
No, he's
no,
a passenger.
Okay, well, I was like,
Now, I hope he's not going before the judge in Washtenaw County.
If I do, I'll just tell him I know Adolph Mongo.
Yeah. Okay, Whitney, you wanted to you was like, hey, let me come on the show tomorrow. So what is it that you want to talk about? We know that you're a candidate for City Council District 5. There's 13 candidates. As it stands now, we don't know if everybody's going to be on the ballot.
Why should you get elected? Why should you represent the
hey,
district?
I'm the guy. Certainly. Good morning again, and thank you all for having me. I believe, we've been listening to this podcast for quite some time, and the issues that you all are addressing this morning, it sounds as though this time calls for a leader who is willing to fight like they're fighting from the bottom, bring people together, apply common sense to a number of different issues. You see that these aren't one issues. You see that we need structural change, and we need a leader who is sober-minded enough to work with people from both sides of the aisle, someone who has something to lose, who's raising children here in the city. That's what you need. I'm fired up because you see all the things that we've been talking about this morning. That this is how can we sell this city when you're talking about the things that you're talking about? How are young families going to say, okay, this is the place I want to raise my family? You guys, we need change, but you have to have a leader who is willing to pull on every lever, whether I have to go to Lansing, even to DC. I'm the one that you want to make the argument for the change that we need.
Well, what would you do if you were an elected official and you just listened to what Vanessa was saying about the little Down syndrome boy who was murdered?
Absolutely heartbreaking.
How would you deal with that?
I believe that not only is that question very important, but this moment is important. I believe that this race is so significant because of who is asking for in-house promotion. If we don't beg for our schools and negotiate for our schools right now, we're not going to ever have a chance. If we don't negotiate and ensure that the people that are asking for a promotion have to justify the failures that they've had, we'll never have this chance again. And so that's what we're going to do. We're going to use this moment and say, if you want to be the governor, if you want to be the mayor, then you've got to address these issues. What is it that we can do? How can we come together in a local way and use our collective influence to sway what's going on even at the national level? But we've got to have leaders who are galvanizing people. We've got to have leaders who are intentional about not being gatekeepers. We've got to have people that can lead but still have the humility to learn from elders like yourselves. That's what this moment takes, and I believe I'm the guy to make the case.
Whitney, I have a question to ask you. I saw you in the store the other day. I live downtown.
Yes, ma'am.
I walk from my place to the Belle Isle Bridge. That's about 8 miles, and I walk back. Wow. And I noticed that we have a lot of buildings, right? Buildings empty. The next day, earlier this week, there was an article in the paper about Dan Gilbert and all these buildings, and he talked about, building up downtown Detroit, but now there's nobody in these doggone buildings.
Certainly.
Nobody.
Certainly.
So as one member of City Council, what is it that you think that you can do to help get people back into the city of Detroit? Because listen, you could talk about how beautiful downtown is. You could talk about all these wonderful things that have been done in the city of Detroit with the current mayor. But the reality is we have a lot of empty buildings. The reality is we can't be a first-class city if we don't have people working in these buildings, if these buildings are not occupied. What is it that you believe that you could do as one voice of city council to make a difference? Is he frozen?
He's frozen.
Yeah.
So I think what's really interesting about Mr. Clark and any of the other viewers or any of the other people that are running, maybe we'll have him here in a second.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah.
Is a spirit. He has spirit. He's got blood running through his veins that he wants change. I don't know if out of 13 people he has an opportunity to win that seat, but I give him credit for his willingness to fight the battle.
But I want to know what they're gonna do with the Child Protective Services. You know, it's like a lot of times some of these elected officials do not want to fight
I would
deal with the issue head on. So
Yep. Go ahead, Whitney.
Yeah.
He's still frozen.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, everybody on the panel, a question, and our colleagues out there that are participating here is it a Flint issue? Look what's happened in Flint. You know, I knew
that's what opened it up.
Huh?
Go ahead.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm not sure what parts you may have heard or may not have heard, but what I want to address what Ms. Vanessa raised in a specific way. I intend to have an adverse possession conference. What we'll do is we'll just shank at the bottom. We'll allow people to take control of these buildings, and because here's the thing, we're trying to figure out who owns them. We don't know who owns them. And so what if we put them back on the tax rolls? What if we give them to people and say, because of adverse possession, you can have this place? And the owner then has to come back and say, well, I own this building, because we've been trying our hardest to identify who owns these places. I say we just get them back up and running, and we'll let those who own these places come to us. But we've got to get them moving. We've got to do something, you guys. We're not going to bring the city back if we just...
Easier said than done, Whitney. I'm telling you, we don't have buildings in this city that's been abandoned for damn near 70 years or so. You can look at the Packer plant, who now they're trying to do something, but we had the train station and all these other places sitting empty, people speculating, people on property. Don't do a damn thing to it. You can go down Jefferson, been empty for 30 years, and an old nightclub. And I'm like, what are they ever gonna do with it? Somebody tried to buy it, and the guy won't sell it because they want 10 million or 20 million or whatever the fuck they want from it.
Well, let me speak to that really quick. But the thing of it is Mr. Adolph, you know, they definitely can come and put a piece of paper on your window if it's adverse possession that they're after.
But it don't mean shit. We got a church that's been standing there for 20 fucking years, and they ain't even open. Right there on 7 Mile in Woodward.
Yeah.
And right in the heart of a neighborhood that should be redeveloped.
Yeah, absolutely.
And nobody's doing shit because the people that tried to build this church, they don't even live in Detroit. And they're not even going to fill it up. But it's been 3 years and they haven't finished the damn thing. And they tied up that whole area over there.
Well, then you tell me who, and let me just say this really quick, Ms. Vanessa. I want you to tell me who else in this city council race is talking about addressing the structural change. That's my point. You tell me that it can't be done. I believe that's where we need to start. It's where you are. Go ahead, Ms. Vanessa, but I just want to point that out. We've got to be asking for these things. We've got to be forcing the issue, because that's what's happened over time. The power in city council has dwindled down, and look at us now, as docile as we've ever been. But we've got to have a leader that's going to say no. We've got to trouble the waters. Yes, ma'am.
So 2 things. There are viewers who says that you didn't answer the question that Adolph asked you about. I believe the question, I don't know what question, because Adolph asked you 2 questions, but they don't believe that you asked the question. Other thing is, Marshall, so 2 of his questions was, one was, why are you running for city council? And 2, what are you going to do about in terms of using your voice. And of course, I'm paraphrasing about, we talked about the story of this young man and holding people accountable. I should
Certainly.
say young man, this baby, because this is a baby.
Mhm.
I'm also going to go back to, so that's 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
Marshall says landlords are never discussed. They are independently greedy and lack knowledge about how important synergy is between the landlord and the person renting space in order to start a new business. They overcharge and they don't lease fairly. There's too much risk on the side of the people renting or leasing. And I'm assuming there are many benefits for the landlords not to rent at all, as they can write off their losses against the more profitable enterprises in other areas of the stat. So, can you address all three of those things? Because you're
Certainly.
running for city council, and we talked about how we want people to answer these questions.
Certainly. Certainly.
Okay?
So the initial question, why am I running for city council? I am running for city council because it's obvious that we are trying to be driven out of our own city. We're looking at the housing conditions, we're looking at the schools. And we need a leader who is going to meet this moment. I'm also running for city council because I'm raising a family here. And so what happens next in this city matters to me. I believe we've gone far too long allowing those who are not genuinely invested to run our city. That's why I'm running for city council. I'm also running for city council to protect our seniors. We have an influx of baby boomers getting ready to retire, and we have to ask ourselves in a serious and sincere way, what are we going to do when our workforce is cut in half? I'm running for city council so that we can be pursuing home ownership and not affordable rent that's not actually affordable. I am running for city council to address the structural change that the old heads from the past say cannot be addressed. I am running for city council so that we can create a collaborative effort with our school district and bring trades back to our school. I am running for city council because my children's life depends on it. I am running for city council because women cannot live and go outside after dark. I am running for city council because our citizens have been overtaxed. I am running for city council because we have people on the police board that are getting promotions and their record is criminal, more criminal than the people that they're policing. I am running for city council because the police officers don't live in the city. That's why I'm running for city council. I'm running for city council because we need structural change. And it's time to have a leader who's not afraid to kick the tires. Let's do something or we're done here. Let's save the schools or we're done. Once the baby boomers retire and we're trying to protect them and our kids, it's going to
Okay.
be too much. That's why I'm running. Why aren't you running? What have you been doing?
Okay.
What's the next question?
The next question was, when we talked about the baby that was murdered by, basically the question is about accountability. How would you use your voice as a city council member to ask for accountability when we're talking about
Well,
Department of Health and Human Services? And I think that's very important because we have a lot of people that come through the juvenile system, neglect and abuse system, BPS. We're talking about neglect and abuse. And a lot of them are Detroit residents, and a lot of them live in District 5. So how are you going to use your voice to say, hey, we need some accountability? And certainly fire one peon, somebody that's a worker at CPS, is not going to solve the issue.
Certainly. Well, I hope the fervor in my previous answer is proof that I am willing to make the argument for what we need. And I think that this moment is important because the mayor wants to be governor, and our state constitution opens up next year. Somebody's got to say something. You guys been talking about these pity pat ASS forums. Somebody's got to raise the stakes and talk about what's really important, huh? Well, that's what we're going to call it all to the mat. We're going to bring people from the left and the right together. We're going to bring people that think everything's okay, and we're going to bring people together that think everything needs to change. And we're going to do something, because if we don't address it, we're done. This is it. We can't kick this up the road anymore. We're done.
Give us how do people get in contact with you? Because
Certainly. Whitney Clark for Detroit.com. Now, let me be transparent. I'm no different than anyone else who tries to run for public office. And so what that means is I am having some challenges with appearing on the ballot. And so let me tell you, if you don't see my name on the ballot August 5th, write it in. Write it there. If you want Detroit to win, write on August 5th, write Whitney Clark with an E on the end. Okay, my website is whitneyclarkfordetroit.com. I'd love to hear from you. And again, if you want Detroit to win on August 5th, write Whitney Clark with an E on the end.
Okay, thanks, Whitney.
Thanks, Whitney.
Have a great day.
Hey, Whitney.
Hey, Vanessa, you want to cover some of our comments on this?
Oh yeah, I'm gonna cover some of our
Well, I
comments.
just
I am
wanna
gonna
say-
say something about the write-in. Listen, y'all know I did a write-in, and that is an uphill battle, and I knew that. But we also know, and my team knows exactly why I did it. And listen, we made some changes last
He
night.
didn't get his signature. He didn't get his signatures.
This was a surprise to me, so you know I'm going to call her name with that. But remember, you and I talked about at dinner last night, right? I don't know if the man with the cape striker has struck again. I don't know what the deal is, but we know. Listen, Adolph and I know we got some intel that some stuff is about to come out. There may be a whole lot of people that may not appear on the ballot. There's going to be some challenges, but let me get to some of our people. Go back to Timothy Squire Bay. You have to start with building up the neighborhood. The neighborhoods have been left out. Duela Boy says, thanks, Mr. Clark, for even speaking on these issues. Stephanie Jackson said, meet the moment to do what? Protect us how? Pursuing home ownership how? Land bank? Question mark what? She has a lot of questions. Cynthia Burnett said, yay, we need to let the younger, newer, smart voices add their ideas and solutions to the serious issues of our city. Greta Woodson says home ownership for the legal residents. Greta Woodson said, maybe calm down. The fast talk does not change hearts and minds. She also says, less pulpit and more policy. Sam says, still did not respond to Vanessa's question regarding the baby. Stanley Brooks says, had Whitney Clark tried getting his name back on the ballot. And Stephanie Jackson said, he scared me. So, and he said, thank you all so much. We are going to win. That's Mr. Clark. He just texted me.
Well, you know, I'm sad to hear that.
Yeah.
He's the write-in.
Yeah. Because it's 13.
You got the politics 101. Get on the ballot.
Yep.
Get on the ballot. Stay on the ballot.
In a 13
Mine
person,
was a little different because I had the signatures. Mine was a little different, but that's okay.
In a 13-person race, you're a write-in candidate. Forget about
it.
Yeah.
You're done.
Yeah.
Well, if that's the case and he's not on a ballot, I think you're right, Allan. It's unfortunate. I appreciate his spirit. I appreciate that blood running through.
I like the young man. I like these young folks that get out there and decide that they want to stay here and be leaders, etc. Because I'm tired. Here we got people that's sitting on the Wayne County Commission that's been the mayor of Highland Park, the state senator, state rep, and they 99 years old.
They play musical chairs, right?
Not doing shit. And you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. I know exactly who you're talking about.
They sit up there but I blame the voters.
I was just getting ready to say, who do we blame? We blame the people who vote for these people.
Vote them in.
And they be pissed off and mad because and don't hold these people accountable. Listen, if they had a forum, if they had a debate, listen, we will be sitting there asking them the questions as the governor, sir, ma'am. What do you have to say about the Department of Health and Human Services? As the mayor of the city of Detroit, what do you have to say about all these buildings on the riverfront? Because I walk down the riverfront and they're empty. What is your proposal for getting these buildings filled up with people working? Because guess what? You have all these coffee shops.
Those days are gone. Those days are gone.
Okay, so then what's the use of building up the riverfront? To look at empty buildings?
Well, hey.
But those are the questions that need to be asked. What is your
Nobody's
plan?
asking. Nobody's asking.
Have we forget?
We don't have a debate.
Have we forgotten Flint is the question? You know, I have a friend that was the chief of police in Flint. They had something like 32 officers in the whole city of Flint. Rick Snyder and his goons basically destroyed Flint. Is it Flint? Does nobody care about Flint? That's my
No,
question.
nobody cares about Flint. Nobody cares about Saginaw. Nobody cares. Listen, Pontiac is the county seat of one of the richest counties in America, and go look at it. Brooks Patterson and them basically shit on Pontiac while they held office there for 30 years. And here they're getting mad at the new county exec because he said, I'm going to move some employees downtown. You know, he's trying to fatten up the downtown area. You go downtown Pontiac, don't even have a coffee shop.
It might have a coffee shop, but it's like a movie set. I worked out there for a while for Pete Carmanos, one of the investors in Deadline Detroit, had an office downtown Pontiac. I would go out there once a week. There were a few stores, but you walk down the main street there, it was like walking on an empty movie set. There was like one person on the street at a time. They had a brewery down there. One of them closed. The other one was still open. But downtown Pontiac's a perfect place to bring employees and beef up. I mean, the city of Pontiac, there's so much poverty. There's too much crime. They don't have a police department. They contract out with
the schools are fucked.
Yeah.
They used to have several high schools. They don't anymore. Listen, Oakland Press used to be the Pontiac Press. Auburn Hills used to be Pontiac Township. So everybody want to take Pontiac out of their name, just like what they was doing in Detroit. Listen, we all know how things goes. When things go south, people want to disassociate themselves from it. Pontiac, your county seat, your largest city in your county, one of the richest counties in America, and it looks like shit.
And you talking about Pontiac, a black city, right?
Well, it's just a city.
Really bad. But listen, Dorian Denard says, "Can anyone dig up Hazen Pingree, please? We haven't had effective leadership in over 120 years." You also says we have to wait out this recession to shake out for the commercial building bubble another 5 years or so. Stanley Brooks says, I think that General Motors owns some of those buildings along the riverfront south of 375. Whoever own it, listen, something's going to have to be done. They're talking about, listen, that doctor bought one of the towers, Renaissance Towers, for $9 million. What's going to happen with that if all the other buildings along the riverfront, nobody's in it? But
we can put Cox in it.
Okay.
So let me ask you all a question real quick, and I'll stop here. But
go ahead.
Stanley Brooks was talking about buildings along 375 in Detroit. But what do Pontiac, Detroit, Saginaw, and Flint all have in common? General Motors. Where's General Motors? Where did they go?
They abandoned them.
They're in Mexico. General Motors has a huge footprint in Mexico now. They produce a lot of cars down there in Mexico. General Motors, Flint used to be Buick, everything. I mean, it was
Lansing used to be
Pontiac. Was the Pontiac?
Lansing used to be a General Motors.
Yeah.
What's that Rolls Royce song? You abandoned me, love.
Don't live here anymore.
Yeah, right. That's it. And General Motors don't live here anymore.
Listen, I remember I sung that to somebody, but I digress. Listen, Jim, you said what do all those cities have in common besides General Motors is predominantly black. But Allan, you said that General Motors has a big footprint in Mexico, right?
Huge.
Is General Motors pitching a fit about these tariffs? Because see, all of this stuff all of this stuff is connected together, and people have to see that. What does General Motors have to say? General Motors is the same company that President Obama gave a bailout to. What do they have to say about this? You leave here and you leave these cities that Jim talked about with this. They had a huge footprint in all these areas. You've left, you've abandoned us, like Adolph said, and you've gone to Mexico. After you took our money, okay? The taxpayers' money of a bailout. I ain't picking on you, General Motors, but I'm just asking the question.
It's not just General Motors. It's the prostitute on the east side called Chrysler or whatever they changed their name to. Mercedes, Daimler, everybody's whore, because every time somebody want to come in and have a footprint in America, they buy up the old Chrysler Corporation, put another name on it for 4 or 5 years. We have been bailing folks out, and yet we can't bail a city out. We can't develop, but we can give countries billions of dollars to bomb each other up, but we can't give Planned Parenthood $2 or our schools $3.
Listen, Cashmere Monroe says she calls it government motors. Stanley Brooks says it's not Chrysler Stellantis. Duela Boy says right now is due to Trumpism. Joe Cool says corporate taxes need to be raised back to pre-RR era. Chip Tracy, sounds like you need Whitney Clark. Deborah Harris says Chrysler trying to go to Mexico.
Well, listen, you have to go. They can't even buy the cars there.
It's interesting. There's an article actually in Deadline Detroit by Eric Starkman talking about cars and how many they go by parts, American parts, how much cars are made in America. The top 20 are foreign cars. Toyota, all the others. Ford and GM don't even make the top 20 in there.
You forgot one, Allan.
Yeah.
Stellantis.
You forgot one. You forgot an American-made car. Keep going.
Oh, Tesla. Tesla is. Yeah, Tesla is actually on that list of American-made parts in there. GM and Ford don't even make the top 20 in any of the cars made. So there's a lot of car parts coming from, Mexico. They're manufacturing a lot of parts down there.
And you go to Europe, and you see all these Ford cars made by Ford, and you say, where the fuck those cars come from? Because they're not here in the U.S., but they over in Europe. General Motors and Ford and them, they make all kind of cars for the Europeans, and here, shit, they unabandoned. Just like General Motors abandoned downtown Detroit, they abandoned the U.S. The car industry. Detroit was founded because of cars. This was our whole existence, and when that went away, when they start moving to Canada and all these other places, the down south, etc., cheap labor. You see what happened to Detroit, Flint, Lansing, Saginaw, Pontiac. You can go down on Clark Street, right off of Michigan Avenue, and see where all those empty buildings are that used to be General Motor plants, where you had restaurants and you had all kind of businesses because of the factory workers. Go over Amtrak, where you had Dodge, Maine, had 35,000 workers. That's a city in itself. Yeah, those.
Well,
it happened again.
The state of Michigan was giving subsidies to General Motors for them to keep, I think, the electric vehicles over in Poletown there. Part of the condition was that I think they keep at least 4,000 employees in the headquarters in Detroit. Now that was waived. They're going to move into the Hudson's building. They're probably going to have maybe
two people.
2,000, well, maybe 2,000, maybe less. But the lion's share of General Motors, thousands, I don't know what it is.
Chrysler headquarters in Detroit is the old Chrysler building with the dime store in it.
Right. And the tech center.
Chrysler presence in Detroit.
Right. The tech center in Warren is where everything is happening, and for General Motors, Mary Barra goes there. The designers are there. They make the new, talk about the new models and stuff like that. She does interviews out of Warren. Detroit is just, whatever they want to have. Like Detroit Address, which
afterthought.
So yeah, so we need to ask these mayoral candidates those questions. But listen, I want Miss Sheila said we need the President Trump to bring back the automotive business. Stanley Brooks, General Motors is moving into a smaller footprint, which is inside the Hudson Block, which is true. Charles Styles by Miles Clothing Store says, "What about the fraudulent voters?"
We don't even, the fraudulent voters is the ones that don't even vote. Listen, I'm sick of hearing about fraud because we don't even have people vote.
Not in Detroit.
15% of the people.
Right.
Damn. I wish there was voter fraud.
Right.
But it ain't.
Right. Jill Sheridan, who was a frequent viewer, she said frequent viewer says Rivian. I don't know what that is.
Rivian. Car company.
Rivian. What is that?
It's a car company. It's a small independent car company.
They're in Plymouth.
I think they have some presence here, but they're in California.
What they look like?
Yeah.
They're beautiful. They're expensive.
But there's also an EV company in Troy that is being backed by Bezos, and they're going to open a car factory.
I wouldn't buy shit from Bezos.
Yeah,
Bezos.
I agree with you.
Bezos. Well, we are come to an end. Allan, your final thought?
I'll end on a positive note. I just want to say the Detroit Pistons, it was such a great season for them, and it was great to watch them. They did blow it, but I'll tell you, they've got the heart. They really are representative of, when we talk about the blue collar. They were great. They had a great season, and their coach, Bickerstaff, was great.
Yeah, I'm crying.
Kudos to the Pistons.
Fuck the Pistons. Go ahead, Jim.
Deborah Harris said, "What happened good in Detroit?" There's a lot of good going on in Detroit, Deborah. And what's really good going on in Detroit is Detroit in black and white. Adolph's been at it for a very long time. Vanessa and Allan have been at it a very long time. Don't lose your voice. Continue to participate in this show because we learn from you every week, every time we're on. And I want to thank everybody that's participating.
Okay, Vanessa.
I want to echo what Jim said. And I'm also going to say that the first 30 minutes of the show, I was really amped up. My heart was beating really fast because we really care about what happens in our country. We really care about what happens in our community. We really care about people. That's one of the reasons why we do this show. So we're going to ask that you guys continue to watch us. Tell your friends about Detroit in black and white. Join us again on Wednesday evening at 8:30 p.m., Friday 8:30 p.m., and next Saturday. And thank you so much.
Okay, and we'll be back next week. I want to thank everybody. Thanks, Teresa, and thanks our guest Whitney Clark. I'm sad that you're not going to be on the ballot, man. I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
Need your voice, whether agree with it or not. See you next week.
All right.